be understanding that setting a goal requires your ability to possibly fail. It's probably going to happen at some point. But if you just keep getting scared about failing, so therefore you don't set a goal, you're never ever going to find. Hey guys, okay, so it's time for me to give myself a bit of a review on my last event. So what happened last couple of days, I shot out for a 24-hour long run. It was supposed to be a training session. So majority of you already know that I'm going to be attempting this year at some point, hopefully when the stars align, I'm going to be running from Newcastle to Sydney. So as a training session to see what it's going to be like when my fatigue sets in and when I start to get sleepy and all these different things that happen after you've been doing something for such a long period of time, I needed to see what it was like. So I went out for a 24-hour run, and I was actually heading out there with a mate, a fellow ultra runner as well, Dave. And we were going to go from Glenbrook, the base of the Blue Mountains, and our goal was to, we didn't really care about how many kilometers that we were going to clock up, but the goal was to just move the body, walk, run, wherever we could and had to, all the way up to Katoomba, which is basically the top of the Blue Mountains, and then we were going to funnel and work our way back down again. That was the plan. So unfortunately, due to a few circumstances, we started at Glenbrook at 5 p.m. on Thursday afternoon, and we made our way through the first kind of 10 to 11 hours, but unfortunately, stars didn't align, and Dave himself actually ended up just finding his body just stiffen up too much compared to his normal runs. We did actually have to cease it there, and we got ourselves all the way up to Wentworth Falls, and it was about 5 a.m. in the morning, and we actually had to catch the train home, just because otherwise we were just going to be running the risk of Dave hurting himself, and it's just realistically not worth it if you're in this game for a long period of time. Taking a little bit of a hit, to be honest, just purely because we plan these things in advance for so long. I've got to plan my work around it. You've got to plan your life around it. Like 24 hours is a long bloody time, but it's just the lead up, and it's also the after effect. I don't know if you can actually tell, but I'm hardly slept because of obviously being up for such a long period of time. So anyway, I thought the most important thing that I do with my clients, and the reason that we get such good results, is we're in this constant thing of what we call self-reviewing and self-analyzing. Ignorance is bliss, but it doesn't really get you anywhere. Exactly understanding what went well, what didn't go so well. Although I didn't get to head out for the full 24 hours, but within the 12-hour period that we were out there for, and the 70 kilometers that we did actually get to experience, there was a lot of things that I really learned, and I'm going to run you through those things that I learned about my own training, about what my capabilities are, and when I set myself up for the next 24-hour run attempt that I am going to be doing, these are some things that I can really take forward. So just because I set a goal and maybe we didn't have the opportunity and the stars didn't align and we didn't get it done, doesn't mean I can't come away with something for it. And that's what I've spent my day today doing, is making sure that I understand I had some lessons learnt. What did I do well? What didn't I do so well? And what sort of things could really allow me to excel at these very long type efforts that I'm realistically intoing, these adventure type things. I'm going to run you over those few things right now. First one is all about fuel efficiency, okay? So if you've been listening to anything that I've said before, and if you've been either a client of ours, you understand the idea around being fat adapted and its absolute amazing ability to provide you with extra fuel when you're doing these very prolonged sub-maximal efforts. Now, what fat adaptation is basically just using the fat that you have on you as fuel to then actually perform whatever that effort is. Obviously, if the effort starts to become more anaerobic and more intense, well, then you would be using less fat as fuel as opposed to something that what we call sub-maximal, okay? So in an endurance world, because it's such a long period of time, the idea of actually tapping into your fat stores can be enhanced depending on your diet, depending on what you fuel and what sort of nutrition that you take in, not on the day, but actually the months and weeks leading up into your endurance event. So the amazing thing was when we first got into this event, I actually had planned to take in calories and Blue Dinosaur paleo bars. I had some Perpetuum with me and I had some Tailwind with me. To be honest, I had a whole bunch of different stuff because I'm kind of running out of a few different things. So I thought I'd just take a whole bunch and just see what happened. I got a couple of hours in and I kind of started thinking as well, I felt so good and I was obviously burning some significant fat and burning some significant ketones for my brain to keep firing. I was realistically just ticking and felt absolutely amazing. For the actual full 11 hours that were out there, I didn't have an absolute thing. I had water and electrolytes, but in regards to fueling and carbohydrates or fat and protein, I had nothing. And my body was fresh, firing, ready to go. I think that kind of goes into why it's been so hard to actually not be able to fulfill this thing, considering I was doing so well and I hadn't even had anything yet. So one thing that's really highlighted for me is how beneficial it is to be fat adapted, particularly for endurance endeavors. If you can access your own body fat as stores, you run less risk of bonking, hitting the wall, and all those different things. Now, it's a little bit different to the way that a lot of people do it. We've all heard about carbo loading and all those sort of things. But the thing is all that junk food and all that processed sugar is not good for your body. And to be honest, I live a life where I don't like to be eating those foods. So if the majority of my training can be aligned with the way that I'm going to do my events, more i.e. fat fueled, the better that I feel, particularly after the events as well. So extremely fuel efficient. So the idea was once I was going to get to a point where I maybe could experience some sort of fatigue, the central governor syndrome kicking in and my perceived effort starts to go up because I'm quote unquote getting a little bit sugar low, I would have had something. But I didn't experience that and we kind of got to almost the halfway point, which is very, very exciting. So I know that my diet, my nutrition for this fat adapted approach is very on point at the moment. So that was some very, very green lights. Another thing that I found is that on these long things it takes me about 3 to 4 hours to really get in the mode, to get into it. By the time I've actually tapered off for this and allow my body to rest and recover, and you start listening to the body, to start exercising again or start training and moving the body again, it took me a few hours to get into it. I don't mean fitness wise, but what I mean is just that kind of that groove, where you're feeling like tunnel vision starts to come to a point where you can feel focused. Your flow, if you've ever been in a flow state before, that's basically every runner's high that you've ever heard of. It took me about 3 to 4 hours to get into this runner's flow. So for next time that I do that, not expecting some amazing things, maybe when I first start out, is probably a really good thing for me. So it takes me a little bit of time to get into it, especially when something's so large and so big. So that was very interesting. So I know going into the next one, I can kind of pace myself knowing that maybe the first few hours aren't so good, but as I get into it, the flow really starts to take forward. Okay, so the next thing that I found absolutely amazing was my aerobic efficiency, my aerobic base, my aerobic capacity. We were going down hills, up mountains, and all these different things. And my aerobic base, my ability to churn and burn, my cardiovascular system is for me, it's never been at this point. I am absolutely on fire when we talk about submaximal effort for a consistent amount of time, meaning that my endurance, cardiovascular wise, is really, really on point, and I'm very, very happy. So when I look at my training program, I can take a little bit of a less focus around that and actually focus on some other things that I maybe have highlighted, which I'm about to talk about now, that could increase my ability to perform at a faster rate without necessarily the exhaustion rate going up along with it. So aerobic efficiency on point, exactly where I wanted to be. Wasn't gassed, didn't feel huffed, didn't feel puffed one little bit. Climbing up the hills, had our poles out, felt really, really good, really, really strong. Even particularly considering I had no fueling that was going in externally. So the next thing that I really found is that the strength training that I've been doing is really paying off. Now, I don't do big blocks of training in regards to like hours or 90 minutes of strength training, particularly for these endurance events. I will typically do 15, 20 minutes here, a little bit of preload before I head out for an aerobic effort, so meaning that I can actually stress the musculoskeletal system in the running pattern, in the walking pattern, and then go and do an aerobic activity to try and mimic what a longer session is like. So these sessions have really really paved off. Could I do a little bit more of it at the back end of this 12-hour run? I think yes. Going back, I think knowing what I know now with the fact that my aerobic condition is exactly where I need it, I know that for the next couple of weeks, for the next meso cycle, I can really focus and hone in on these micro sessions. I reckon if I can get a little bit more strength in my glutes, my quads, and my hamstrings, I'm really going to find that my actual muscle skeletal system is not going to break down so much. So by the time I got to the 12-hour mark, I was feeling a little bit of fatigue in the legs, nothing too much, but comparatively from my cardiovascular system, the breathing side of things, to my muscles in my legs, I probably felt more fatigue happening up here. Now that could be also the fact that I also wasn't taking in any fuel at that time as well. So that could have been mitigated as I started to take in some sort of fuel. However, if I was just to take with some plain feedback, I think focusing on more strength training and more strength to relate to endurance is really going to be beneficial for these long types of efforts that I'm realistically trying to do. Definitely with the breakdown of going upstairs, going down hills, the quadricep fatigue from all that eccentric load from running downhill with a big 5 to 10 kilogram pack on. It takes a toll on your actual muscles. So I know for the next meso cycle, I'm going to put a priority around my strength training, not only continue what I've been doing, but I may actually elevate it up and just reduce a little bit of aerobic time that I'm spending and just increase that strength time. So really, really good for me to actually understand that. So the next thing that, unfortunately, Dave, I'm going to use this one from you, mate, because I can always still get better at this as well, which is the idea around being mobile and making sure that you're doing your stretching and making sure that your muscles have good length in them as well. Now, at the point of where we were kind of ceasing and we got back to Wentworth Falls and we're catching the train, my muscles definitely did start to kind of, whether I just realized that the whole thing was over or my body actually was at that point where it was starting to kind of stiffen up a little bit. But I think taking the next meso cycle again, along with the strength increase, I'm going to increase my stretching capabilities and my stretching capacity a little bit more. So doing some more prolonged holds throughout the week, getting into very specific mobility exercises so that I can make sure my body can stay at that range of motion as the muscles just get tighter and tighter and tighter as the hours progress into it. It's only going to be more beneficial for me. I'm doing a bit at the moment, but to be honest, I'm probably leaving it by the wayside if I'm talking about compared to my aerobic training and my strength training. So I'm going to take the next kind of 4 weeks just to try and lengthen out the muscles a little bit more and try and get my mobility in a very, very positive state. Maybe actually trying to lift the amount of time that I do that a little bit more than what I've been doing. So that's great to come away with. Okay, so my second last point is one thing that I can be very, very positive with is I've got a really good head. And as weird as that sounds, when it comes to endurance endeavors and events, is that it's like killing yourself with a spoon. It's like just this little bit eating away at you. That's what endurance is kind of like, right? It's not the most maximal amount of effort that you can provide within a short period of time. It's just this little piece where it just keeps kind of eating away at you. And if you've got a good head on you, it really goes a long way when you talk about your perceived effort, your perceived exhaustion, and just your ability to block it out. And I was very zoned in for this run coming into the 24 hours. And I know that just taking away with that understanding that I've got a really good mindset around how to push myself, what it feels like when you're starting to get tired, when you're starting to feel, those lows, when you're out of flow state, you're not feeling so good, is what are the things that you can really draw to. And the fact that I think that I've got a very good mindset around for this sort of stuff is that I focus on the thing that I'm currently doing. I don't get too far ahead of myself. So 24 hours is a long bloody time just to be moving and just standing up in general, right? If I was to stand here for 24 hours, that would be just as exhausting. So I knew that was a long period of time to do this for. But if I kept thinking about that, my head would have been broken. So I had to break them up. And Dave and I talk about this quite a fair bit along the way, is you have to split these little things up. And now knowing that even more so by testing myself like what I did, is that think about the micro. I've got this huge long goal that I want to tick off. But if I just focus on this massive long thing that I'm going to be doing, I'm going to get carried away. My head's going to go, oh no, that's massive, that's too big. And most likely your perceived effort and your perceived exhaustion levels will just go all the way up. So going back to, having good mental capacity, mental focus, focusing on the micro. What have I got to do now? What are the steps that I've just got to do to keep moving forward? Look at the 5 kilometer mark, especially considering that we're easily going to be ticking off plus 100 Ks, thinking about just a little bit, one foot in front of the other, and knowing that going into my next 24-hour event that I'm going to be doing over the next mesocycle is going to be really, really advantageous for myself. And another one, just to kind of wrap this all up, and now this could also be relevant to a lot of you out there, is that it just shocks me so much when I find out how important it is to set yourself a goal. Now, when all the events kind of got shaken up and we all got cancelled with all these, with all the COVID rules coming in, to be honest there, for a few weeks I was lost. I had no idea what I was training for, and did my discipline kind of waver a little bit? Yeah, maybe not on the training side, but I wasn't stretching as much, I wasn't going to bed early, I wasn't doing all the things that I had to do to make sure that I could perform. So setting a goal, even if it's your own crazy goal that you've made up, just like what I'm doing here, is that having a goal and working towards something really means something. It gives you a reason to get out of bed, gives you a reason to go to bed on time, rather than sitting on your phone and just following people on Instagram and Facebook at a stupid time in the nighttime where you should be asleep. Setting a goal, setting a clear measurable to see whether you are going to make the right actions that's going to lead you to completing that event. Now, I haven't completed the 24 hours, so I know that goal is still there. But if I hadn't set it in the first place, be understanding that setting a goal requires your ability to possibly fail. It's probably going to happen at some point. But if you just keep getting scared about failing, so therefore you don't set a goal, you're never ever going to find that true sense of moving forward. Ignorance is bliss, but it gets you absolutely nowhere. And I know that setting a goal has become such a big part of my life. I look at all the different sectors and I go, right, what do I need? What do I want out of these sort of things? And then work your way backwards from there. So my next mesocycle is just about created in my mind. My next steps now is to actually write it out for myself, my program that is. And then it's time to adventure back out for this 24 hours. It will be done. It's a goal. Again, I have just as much possibility of failing it, but if I don't give it a go, well then I never have any chance of succeeding in the first place. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed this video. Hit me a like if you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something about it. Otherwise, tune in. I'm sure there'll be another video coming soon. Bye.